There's one. There's two. Everybody's here.
Merry Christmas from the This Uncanny Earth crew. Welcome back to another episode. As always, I am your host, Ebenezer Solomon, and with me, of course, is the most grumpiest Grinch there could be. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the non-themed Christmas known as Spider. But it's funny, he's got a green headset and I've got red, so it's still Christmas.
I'm still humbugging it up.
He's still humbugging it up. He is. But don't let that Grinchy exterior fool you. He's a very nice person in real life. So don't let it fool you.
Jerry's out.
He's got a hard outer shell, but he's got a warm caramel inside. I'm gonna see if I can crack him open. First we crack the shell, then we crack the nuts inside.
That's getting a little close.
Is it getting a little close to like an ESRB rating?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to like
TV 17. What's up? What's going on with you all today? I hope everybody's having a Merry Christmas and a Happy Yule, because Yule is upon us as well.
Yep.
The winter solstice has hit us. For those of you that are practicing that sort of thing, do your candle thing, do your magic thing, do whatever you do. I like to think of myself as the alchemist and my co-host as the herbalist, if you will, in a roundabout way.
That makes it sound like I'm not really an alcohol guy, but more of a.
Oh no, no, he's definitely more. He's definitely a spirits individual.
I'm very spirited.
He is. He's more. Most he needs it. He needs it just to get by.
Yeah.
And of course, we have Santa Claus.
And it is our the 2022 edition of our holiday special. Of course,
it is. 100%.
How many? Is this what the third one we've been able to do?
Third or fourth.
Yeah.
2018. So 19, 20, 20. That's
fourth.
Like the fourth.
Yeah. Yep. So this is our fourth holiday special. Well, at least end of the holidays. We've had Halloween specials and other kind of holiday stuff. This is our fourth end of the year holiday special.
And we'll have one more next week for the New Year's Eve extravaganza. So yeah, we have that. So what's going on in your world, Spider? Any updates? Anything new Santa Claus would like to know if you've been naughty or nice?
Well, most people clearly know the answer to that question.
We do, don't we?
But we aren't going to do anything this year. We're not going to be going anywhere because two reasons. First, have you seen Ohio lately?
Oh my God, it's cold and disgusting.
And second, because after the last holiday, we all got sick with this nasty cold, and we're all still trying to get that last little cough just to go away. So we figured it's best just to not do any kind of outings or anything like that. We're going to cook a nice meal and we're going to hang out here at home. Let me pull up the Facebook to see who's.
I think that's Elizabeth Wittenberry. That's either Elizabeth Wittenberry or Sherry Brady.
It is. It sure is.
Yeah.
It sure is.
I thought so.
Go ahead and put that up there.
She actually liked the post that I made earlier, because Elizabeth has always been an awesome human being to us and will always continue to be an awesome human being to us. So thank you. Here's a glass raised to you, Elizabeth, because you've always been there in our corner. So shouts out to you. Oh boy, I put a little bit more whiskey in there than I did eggnog. So not the smartest choice I've ever made, but whatever. See where it goes. So we are talking ancient civilizations pre-Ice Age. To get started here, the idea of a precursor civilization actually exists in the Bible. If we turn to Genesis, we have the amazing part about the flood, right? But there was a whole world before the flood. Before the flood came, there was a whole civilization. And the Bible isn't the only book that talks about a flood happening and a precursor race. Native Americans talk about a white red-headed giants roaming around, and they had to kill them off to take their land. So very interesting. Some things to note. We also have I think it's a Buddhist belief. If our good buddy Todd David Anderson was still with us, he would let us know. Yes, definitely got to throw it up for my boy TDA. That's
missed every day. Every day.
Missed every day. He'd have been commenting right and left. But it's yeah. He's with us though. He's watching down like, all right, he got his radio tuned in. He's like, go get him, guys, and we're gonna go get him. So the concept of a civilization existing before these disastrous happenings is in fact little sprinkles everywhere, in every religion, in every belief system for the most part. I'm sure there's like one or two belief systems that don't have that in their books, but you also have the Quran that talks about Allah making people beforehand, making the jinn, and the jinn were too wild, so he destroyed their world and put them in an entirely different dimension. It's very interesting. Also, we have when Cain slayed Abel, he went to a place called Nod. Now, it talks about in Genesis where God says, he's talking to Cain, and Cain tells him, he says, if I go out here, people will kill me. He said, no. He said, if they kill you, they're going to get it 7 times 7. So they're going to get it that many times over, and nobody ever killed him. And he had a record of having his own civilization, own people, everything. We have the Noah Ark, where he builds this giant boat. The flood comes, it recedes. He's still there. The giants are gone, but it's funny because if you get later on into Joshua and First Kings and all that, you have David who slays Goliath. I believe that's Second Kings. I'm sorry. Who slays Goliath? Goliath was a giant. He was a Rephaim. Him, King Og of Bashan, and a whole bunch of others still existed. So the giants weren't entirely wiped out in this flood. So they had to go somewhere. They had to go to highland. They had to do something, which leads me to believe that maybe that flood was localized. But the funny thing I've noticed is every culture has a flood myth, right? You even have Incan, Mayan, Aztecs that talk about a great flood or a great destruction and then a rebirth. Like I was saying before about Todd David Anderson, I think it's Buddhism where they believe that there's a reincarnation of worlds, where there's a bunch of worlds. You talked about this.
Yeah. You're in a repeating cycle while the soul learns like how to transcend itself and how to move on to ultimate peace, to nirvana and that kind of thing. And so you keep basically regenerating after death over and over and over again and living these lives as a lesson. And occasionally the worlds themselves will also go away because they themselves need, like, an entire population needs to learn a lesson. So they see things like huge natural disasters and they see apocalyptic events as a rebirth of large populations of people because a society itself has like gone so far backwards. Just like, hey, you guys got to learn, so we're going to reset you, do it again, and it's continues the cycle.
Before we get deep into this conversation, because I got some things I want to say too, we have a little something for y'all. We have a holiday toast, and we've got our tin cups as always. Spider gave me this tin cup. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. And he got another one because Spider be collecting them joints, and they're pretty slick. Yeah. The key was my favorite. The blade and bow key was probably one of my favorites.
I got 4 out of 5. I got 4. I only need one more.
Tell me what it is. Tell me what it is, and if I see it, I'll just get it and you just pay me back.
It's number 3.
Okay, I'll look for it when I go to Acme next. All right, we're gonna pour it up tonight. I'm drinking some Canadian Club Classic 12-year aged. So check that out. Very good. It's got some caramel hints, and some rich toffee and oak notes. So it's a good. It's for $20, like 20 some odd dollars. It's a good whiskey. It's my favorite of the Canadian Club. You know, Canadian Club used to, I think, it's bottom shelf, but this one is a 12 years. So it's pretty good for 12 years. Spider's had it. We've got it before. It's pretty good. I like it. It's good for the price point. Show them what you're drinking. Show them what you got.
What I've got is something you may have seen in our very recent episode of the Spirits Club. This is the Iowa number 9, and it's a really dark label. I don't know if you can even see it. Like,
is that the one we had?
No, this is the new one. This is the red
Oh,
cask.
okay.
It's the same as the original, only it's matured in red wine barrels instead of bourbon barrels.
How does that taste?
Um, Not as good as the original. Like it's not bad, but it's lacking in some flavor. Like it has more.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
It has more of an alcohol-y taste and feel to it. It's not bad. Like it's not like as bad as like a straight shot of Jack Daniels, which is like straight up like you're drinking a bunch of alcohol.
Right.
But it's not as good as the regular. Like it's probably something that I would try and I'd keep around, but I'm not gonna probably get this any more often than I would hit the regular.
I respect. Is it still made from corn?
Yep. Yeah, it's still a corn, primarily corn mash bill with based on corn and rye.
It's gross. Sorry, no offense. All right, y'all.
I know.
Merry Christmas, Happy Yule. Cheers, my brother. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Clickety clank, and down the hatch.
I made a mess out of that.
I love Canadian whiskey. It's probably my favorite of the whiskeys, and then probably Irish after that. Canadian always has a smooth, like I'm good. I don't need a chaser to it.
And Irish whiskey is sweet, has a sweetness and a brightness to it, whereas Scotch has kind of like a deeper, more of like a more of the barrel, and bourbon has that fire to it. That's the great thing about spirits. They all have this different signature that makes them stand out.
Like this one. It was a little warm, like it's warming as it's going down, but it wasn't burning like, say, your Jack Daniels or like Maker's Mark, which will just absolutely burn like a mother lover. So, but yeah, figured we'd do that for a nice holiday special. Craig wore his. He decided to wear his.
Yeah, it went all around the side of my beard here. I think my beard like interferes with my shots sometimes.
Or maybe you're just poor hand-eye coordination.
I could be. My mouth's a mess too. Like I need to see a dentist in the next few years because as a kid, I took care of my teeth because, your parents say, hey, take care of your teeth. As like an adult moving out of my parents' house is like, whatever. And I didn't pay attention and I didn't do enough care of my mouth. And so now my mouth is falling apart. It's a bad situation. So sometimes I just dribble stuff all over the place. It's gross.
You're a real hero.
I know. At least I said so live, like on the air right here. So, I don't got shame about it. That's a PSA to you and your children out there. Make sure you take care of your teeth.
I got to do is get some backs done. So I feel it. I feel it in my soul. Anyways, back to these civilizations. So what I think we're dealing with, I think that mainstream archaeology is not in the know. I feel like, or if they are, they're letting things go to a point where it's not even a question of sorry guys, just make sure my mic's good. 9 o'clock. Which way is 9 o'clock? Is that 9 o'clock? That's 9 o'clock, I think.
They're basically playing catch up. Like a lot of the archaeology stuff that we've read recently is they're playing catch up.
Yes.
And it's stuff that like other people have said, like this is a thing that's true. And they're like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. And then now, oh, wait, Popular Archaeology has an article about it. Oh, it is. It's true. But they're just like, we're not going to say that we said it wasn't true before. We're just going to be like, oh, good. Look at this.
I watched a YouTube video. I shouldn't have said that. But it was a scholar. It was like an actual scholar like talking to another guy. I'll have to pull it up and show it to you guys. But he talked about how mainstream archaeology, like National Geographic, loves saying things are either temples, right? They're either temples or what was the other thing they said they were? Palaces. Either temples or palaces. That's it. The guy goes on to say that it was actually a university that they found. And that's the key thing. I don't think, and maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist about this, I don't think they want us knowing about these ancient civilizations pre-flood or the antediluvian era. I don't think they want us to know that, because if we do, then that means science is wrong in a lot of areas, and history is wrong in a lot of areas. And they've built up this narrative that if that would crumble, that would probably change the fabric of society. Though I doubt, to be honest, it would change that much. So
There's something else too that I was thinking of, that a lot of the stuff we talk about mainstream, and mainstream is it's very careful, it's very safe,
mhm,
it's very, let's not offend anybody, let's not upset
yes,
anybody. And so it's part of the new outlook. There's a W word that I won't use because it's overused all the time,
100%.
but it's part of that, where they want to paint the past as not only backwards and less educated, but also more intolerant, more racist, more sexist, more this, more this, more this. And so, of course, temples and palaces, you can say, oh, temples, because they worshipped heathen gods and things. And that must mean that they were not as culturally evolved as us because we do reason and science. And we value these people and these people and these minorities and these people and these kind of things. And palaces, oh, because that builds into the feudal system and dictatorship and tyrants. And, that's, we're so much better than that. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I suspect they do that, to make us feel better, because we're in a better society compared to that, supposedly.
I think what they also do too is they will point out today's injustices. Okay, let's use the
Mm-hmm.
quotations here for that, and they'll paint one specific race, or they'll paint one specific gender, or they'll place one specific religion, and really just ignite a fire on
Yep.
them, and then they'll throw it back to the past. Like, look what your race did. Look what your
Right.
people did. The key words here are race and people. Anything to stir the pot, they will stir the pot with. And the more that we accept and allow that to happen in our society, I think that leads to a societal collapse. Because what
Mm.
happens is, oh, this group's offended. So now this group's offended. Now this group's offended. This group's offended by this group. Group A says that there's this many genders, while group B says there's this many, and it just leads to fighting. And inevitably, right, it leads to a disagreement. It leads to riots. It leads to fighting. It leads to violence, murder. Then you have another group that maybe has more guns. So then they go out and kill this other group. Then there is a law vacuum. So the law steps in. A lot of them are anarchists. So then, boom, then they fight the law, right? Then the law is painted as tyrants for killing their own citizens, but for doing what was right to preserve the state of being. But if they kill the law, then they are the heroes. And then there's a dictatorship, and then it just falls apart. It collapses. We've seen societies do similar things and say, wait a minute, it's this group of people, it's this race of people that's done all of it. It's done everything. They're the bad guys. We got to paint them as the bad guys. Feel bad for who you are as a person. And you got to sit back and just say, that's not true at all. The people around me are all good people. I don't see the people that you're seeing. I don't know the people that you're knowing. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lee Dickey TV. That is our guy. Go check him out. One of the coolest guys ever. And listen, I gotta stop what I'm talking about here for a second. I gotta say something. My man Lee Dickey, all right, it's my guy. This is a good guy. I like Lee. He is a ladies' man. Listen, let me tell you guys a little something, right?
Better get the Crevassier.
Yes, that's him. That's Lee
Crevassier.
Dickey. That's him. He's the ladies. He likes the ladies, and I saw a picture of him, right? Surrounded by like 5 or 6 women, my friend. And I was like, Lee, what are you doing? Lee's like, just relax. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to sip some Cavassier and just relax. I'll be right back. That's my guy. A good guy, good heart. Hardest working guy, though. He was doing like the Van Gogh thing. He was all these things, working like 12-hour shifts, bro, and loving it. Loving it. I work an 8-hour shift and I hate it. I hate it. So shouts out to Lee. If you guys don't know about Lee, go check his YouTube channel, Lee Dickey TV. One of the dopest human beings I have ever met in my entire life. A good-hearted guy. One of these days, brother, we're going to link up. I'm going to come up to Canada, and you and I are going to hang out, and we're going to get some pictures in, and we're going to be uncanny, and you're going to be on the show live, and we're going to do what it do, and we're going to shut Canada down because that's what the Uncanny Boys do. We're going to shut it down.
And it doesn't take much.
Easy. Come on.
Shots
Don't
fired.
do that. Don't do that.
Shots fired.
Don't do that.
Shots fired.
17-hour days, my friend. 17. I can't even. No, I couldn't even work 6. I'm lazy. I'm sorry. I admit it. What you gonna do? Anyways,
you just haven't worked for a while. Like you've just started getting back into being stay-at-home dad to being,
I had to work. Yeah,
getting back to the job. So you're used to just kind of like hanging out and not having to do that. And now you're kind of like, why did I come back to this?
But let me tell you something though. When that paycheck dropped, then I'm like, oh, this is why I came back to it.
True.
The freedom of having that, like that. This is why I came back to it. So it's all good. In the end, it works out. Everything works out. Anyways, jumping back into this civilization thing. What I perceive when people use the W word, right? And it is overused 100%.
Yeah, it's just a really...
It's an ignorant term.
Irritating.
It's
like,
ignorant.
I get it, but it's the same thing as what they use for the other side, which, I don't know what's big and popular for the other side right now. I know there's a bunch of derogatory things that we really shouldn't say, but I don't know what the big, like, anti-W word is right now. But
probably whatchamacallit, the S word. That comes down in wintertime.
Yeah.
That's the word. And both sides are just as bad. Both sides are as bad. All right. So people are like, you got to choose a side. No, we do not have to choose a side. I choose my side, my own side. I'm not going with you, and I'm not going with you. That's it. I'm a man. I stand on my own. I'm gonna stand up for myself, my family, and my people because I'm not with your nonsense. And historically, you're proven wrong. You're always proven wrong because we can pull history up that proves you're wrong. I could pull African history up that shows multiple different races hanging out in one place. They have pictures, paintings, things of that nature in books before the 1800s. So, come on now. And we get all conspiratorial and the media controls things, which they do. It's not a lie. Everybody controls the narrative. So you have to wonder if these ancient civilizations, if they had a form of media that controlled that narrative, right? And then that media caused that narrative to collapse because much like our political system, it's corrupt. Whether you want to believe it or not, it is corrupt. It's 100% corrupt. It's been proven. X president is just as bad as Y president. But people don't see that. People don't understand the idea that could be the case. They sit back and they go to the polls, and you have to wonder if people in these ancient civilizations did similar things, right? Here's leader and here's leader Marduk, right? And they're going at it. It's a campaign battle of the century. They show up at the polls. They vote for But Marduk's people believe that won. So they cause a riot. Or people believe that Marduk won. So they have a riot and protests in the streets. This stuff is not new. There's nothing new under the sun. These things have been done before. Cycles, like Spider talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Cycles.
It's exactly for this reason why many times in history, in ancient Egypt, when a new ruler would take over, if it wasn't just a natural succession and it was like, okay, I'm taking over because you're crap, so I'm going to whoop your cult and send you packing and I'm going to take over the kingdom, they then would go and deface every single image of the past ruler they could find and whatever god they worshipped.
Yep. If
they were like, hey, you worship this god? Nah, he's not the man no more. Mine is.
Yeah.
And then deface everything, carve it out, cut it off, destroy it. And that would just continue. Yeah. And that was a thing in the old days. Like these days, we don't go that scorched earth. I mean, I think people want to.
Yeah.
And I think like the whole statue removal thing is getting like that. And I don't want to wade into like, well, these were people on the wrong side of history and whatever, that's whatever. But it was much worse like way back when. And I'd hate to head back that direction where in the history books, every couple of years, your kids have new history books because, we got to take out all the pictures of this guy because he was garbage and he lost. So let's just rip him out, not talk about him, just say, oh yeah, these many years were dark years. So whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you look behind me, Tutankhamun, his father, Akhenaten, went monotheistic. He believed in one God, had all the things removed of the multiple gods in Egyptian mythology, and he worshiped one God. He dedicated his life to worshiping that one God. And when he died or was succeeded by Tutankhamun, things changed. Things kind of went back to square one. People didn't like the idea of a monotheistic being. They didn't like that. They didn't like having to worship one God. They're like, well, we want to worship multiple gods. And Akhenaten came through and said, nah, ain't gonna do that no more. I'm head honcho. I'm the ruler. And he was rumored to be like 7-8 feet tall. Supposedly he was an alien, if you believe the ancient alien
with
theory.
the elongated, with the skull and everything.
I don't believe it. But
and that's interesting, because that's another pattern that we see. Because back in the Sumerians, they had the multiple pantheon. They had the Anunnaki.
Yeah. Sure
the Akkadians came in. They kind of preserved the same thing, but the Babylonians were like, nah, now Marduk's in charge. So we're going to rewrite all of the different stories where everybody else did things and say, no. Marduk did that. Marduk did this. Marduk did this. All you other guys just helped him. He's the one guy in charge of everything. Yeah. After that, then there was more like multiple gods things, and then you get to Egypt, and then it switches. It's like slingshots. And it's interesting how often the singular deity thing has kind of fought back against the multi-deity thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have that with Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and that goes against religions like Buddhism.
Hinduism has like thousands of gods. Like Hinduism, when Hinduism comes up with when they meet people from new religions they've never met before, they're like, oh yeah, your gods are in our religion too. And they just take them in. Like they're now gods. Yeah. So they just keep adding, and they're just like, yeah, because why not? I mean, why wouldn't your gods be part of our gods? Because all the gods are just themselves.
Then you have the Yazidis, who have the peacock god, in essence. You have all these different beliefs and faiths that all spring from ancient civilizations. And that's the thing that we really need to look into. I think, this is my personal opinion, mind you, I think religion is really the key to understanding ancient civilizations. I think it's the way to understand what these civilizations did, how they lived. The Old Testament is a treasure trove of knowledge, but people are quick to put aside put their biases out there and say, oh, well, it was against this group of people, or, oh, it's ridiculous because they couldn't do this. But those same people don't understand how a civilization actually functions. If you look at things from a perspective of trying to survive, right, you need to be on the same page. If you're eating shellfish, right, if you don't know how to cook it, you get sick and you could die. Dyed fabrics, the dye gets into your skin. Guess what? You die. If you do
trichinosis.
Yes. Or if you don't bed a certain person, right? If you're sleeping with another certain person, you're not going to be able to reproduce. So now your population is going to fall short. So you have to abide. You may not like it, right? But the fact is, without that happening, right, you wouldn't have that civilization. And you have to have that civilization. You have to have all these civilizations. And I want to get to a point that Spider said. The Romans were the laziest group of people ever. All they did was take the Greek mythology and change the gods' names. Everything else, they were like, oh, yeah, just Jupiter did this. And you're like, man,
they took whatever was popular. Like when Christianity was first starting out, they were like, no, we're going to suppress it because it's heretical. Yeah. But once it started catching on, they were like, you know what? If we try to suppress it, we're just going to deal with rebels and riots and things. So let's all just convert to this Christianity thing, whatever.
The funny thing, too, is that a lot of people don't know this, but when Constantine took over, he actually brought paganism in. Paganism is
all together.
If you look at like the Catholic Church, for instance, there's some pagan there's some pagan symbols, at the church. And it's crazy because the Vatican Library has so much knowledge and they've hoarded it for years and they didn't release it. And people are like, well, it's just a bunch of tax forms and it's just a bunch of accounting and ledgers and notes and things and blah, blah, blah. But it really isn't. We have to understand that the Vatican is its own state. It doesn't answer to anybody else. It has its own police force. It has its own courts. It has its own judges. It has its own laws. It has its own system. Vatican City has its own system of laws.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that for a second. That would be like Ohio having its own laws and judges and things, and that's it.
They have a paramilitary force. The Swiss
Yeah, they
Guard
do. I
are
forgot
just
about
like
that. Yeah,
they look
they do.
silly. Like when you see the ceremonial clothes that they wear, they got like that stuff. But
they will murk you in a second.
yeah, and I'll tell you, like I'm not a big fan of like the Dan Brown books and things, but the movies and things when they talk about the Swiss Guard, that's kind of how they are. They got technology, they got all this stuff. They're like a spy agency. They're as good a spy agency as any of ours, or like Israel's, or any of the other people's. Like Israel has one of the best in the world,
Mossad, yeah.
And the Swiss Guard are pretty good. They might not be quite that good, but they're pretty good, and they'll get you.
They will get you.
They'll get you.
There's been people that have tried to break into the Vatican. They disappear. People disappear. Think about that for a second. You have so much knowledge in your archives, and nobody can get to it. I think like they've let a couple people in, and what they let them see wasn't even what they really had. You know what I mean? That wasn't, or what they let them see wasn't what was
big
really there.
Event, like cameras, like, oh, we're getting a sneak peek at the Vatican.
It was like Al Capone's, like Al Capone's safe, and then they opened it and there was nothing inside.
Yeah, it was a vault and there was like nothing in the whole room. Like it was Geraldo back in the day because he was all like, yeah, and there was nothing. Like it was empty. He's just standing there like, ugh.
Yeah, because what you gonna do? Capone got you. He probably had that vault just as a fake vault.
He lived out great. He had his house arrest and he had all of his meals taken care of. He had everything he wanted, and he didn't even pass by anything that anybody did to him. He passed from syphilis. So you know,
imagine if they would have. Are we doing another shot?
Well, I'm gonna do one. Are you gonna do one?
Yeah, I'm gonna do one.
I was gonna sip on it, but
no, we gonna go hard in the paint.
Okay. If that's
so, and let me just specify too. I don't go hard on any one religion, but if I do see inconsistencies, I'm going to point them out as I should. You know, you're gonna watch me pull up. Bam. Whew. I'm getting lit tonight, boy. What did
we gotta get toe up?
No, what did he say? He was like something like Jerry's girl. Cheers. Yeah, here's Tamua. There you go. Let's go down the hatch. It's a smooth one. Oh, look at this. Water. That one I'm going to drink some water with. It's a bit sour on the back end. Some liquors are like, I don't know if I don't know if it's necessarily a sour, more of like a maybe bitter on the back end. So
probably more bitter, but
that's rough. So we have all these religions that talk about pre-flood civilizations or pre-catastrophic civilizations. We have the Aztecs that talk about making mud men, right? Mm-hmm. Mud men, and they were too stupid, so they destroyed them and then made people. Allah made jinn. Jinn got too powerful. He destroyed the world, put them in another dimension, and rebuilt the world, right? God destroyed the world with a flood because the giants were copulating with female women. Females. Sorry, we also have, and here's, I want to point something out too, okay? So Christianity has two views on this. The one is that the giants, the angels came down, made with human. The other one is that one lineage, right, mated with another lineage, and they shouldn't have mated. So there are two schools of thought on this. I think it was like Seth's lineage and Adam's lineage, like couldn't mate, because one was men of God, right, and the other was child of men type of thing. And I can go into that ad nauseum because I love talking about the Old Testament. And be on the lookout. We're going to be getting some Bible studies in the new year. So we're going to have Spider even jump in on a couple episodes, I think, and just have some good conversation regarding that. And then maybe we'll jump to the Quran or the one I can't pronounce in Buddhism.
I have
But
an idea for that actually, but we'll talk about it afterwards.
okay, no doubt. So there's that. We also have multiple accounts of giants. We also have multiple accounts of ancient civilizations. Remember, in the book, it talks about building the Tower of Babel, right? Nimrod wanted to see God. So he built this illustriously huge tower. And it's interesting, there's a movie on YouTube called The Bible. It's from like 70s. George C. Scott plays Abraham, and I can't see him as anything but Ebenezer Scrooge and Patton. So I'm like, what are you doing? But it tells that tale of that happening and Nimrod and all that jazz. And I got to thinking about the Tower of Babel itself and the whole idea of one language, one people. So I think when that tower was built, right, the continents were at a different place than they were today. I think that tower might, when it collapsed, because if it was that big and it was huge, they said it reached up all the way to the heavens because he wanted to see God. He was like, I'm going to find him, keep building. It was huge. I think when that thing cracked and fell, I think it did some serious damage. I think that it wasn't just like it fell. I think it fell hard. Enough to crack the continental plates, maybe not. But I think there was something that happened in connection with that. And if we maybe look at another religion, maybe we see something did happen. Maybe an eruption, maybe something that caused that shift to happen at the time of the Tower of Babel's fall. And the idea of separating languages, right, is an interesting concept because if everybody speaks the same language, it means everybody knew each other. But what if that was just a small percentage of the population? Now, I'm going to throw an idea out here, okay? And I want you guys to take it.
After you're done, I got another one.
Bet. I got you. What if the Garden of Eden wasn't a paradise in a way? What if it was a food center for other civilizations, and Adam and Eve were the gardeners or the caretakers of this civilization? And that's why the angels were there to guard it from people running in and trying to steal stuff, trying to steal food, trying to steal all this stuff. Because back then, notice, they didn't eat animals. There was no animal sacrifice. That didn't happen until everything went to heck and they got kicked out. So what if the Garden of Eden was just a mass food production center for all the civilizations in the surrounding area? Now you have a way to feed everybody, and everybody's eating fruits, vegetables, stuff like that. They're not eating meat. It's something that the world doesn't so much understand, I think. And I think it's more of an interesting point that this was a giant food production center. It was massive. Massive. So when other civilizations came, Adam and Eve were the ones, okay, we gather the fruit, we gather the vegetables, we ship it out. We ship this out to these civilizations. You're thinking, well, two people, but you forget that if it's God, there's going to be technology involved. So while they're picking, right, for different civilizations, this technology is working, right, to get that moving and moving in a right direction to supply these civilizations with food, with supplies, with everything. Because, see, everything was peaceful back then. It wasn't until that happened when they ate the apple, which could be anything. That could be I think it's a symbol for something, but I haven't cracked that yet. I've done some research, but I don't know if it's a sexual thing. I don't know if it's an act of a form of something that desecrated the garden itself. Because I don't think it was an apple that they ate. I think it's a symbol. It's symbolism of some form or fashion, and I just haven't cracked it yet. But I'm gonna get it, and I'm gonna give it to y'all very soon. And who commented? Because I don't know who that is.
That's Elizabeth. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think it had to. I think it did something. If the tower was that massive when it fell, that would have caused an earthquake. I think, and I shouldn't say earthquake because earthquakes are, disruptions and fault line and stuff. But I think if you have a massive building, massive, I'm not talking about like what's the highest building in America right now? Is it still the Sears Tower?
I don't think so. I think something else got past it. But I know the biggest building in the world
Is in
is
Dubai,
that
right?
the one in Dubai, that big giant like needle that it's in the center of the whole everything.
Right. Imagine something like that falling, but even being taller. This gigantic structure, and people are like, they couldn't have done that. But then we look at places like Chichen Itza, where the blocks, you can't even get a credit card through the cracks. It's fitted perfectly, right? So if they could do that, then they could have built this giant, huge building that rivaled every single thing, even that building in Dubai, taller, right? Taller. Because if the pieces interlock perfectly, you're going to have stable weight. Stable weight, okay? And so this building collapses. What if it's then that people lost that ability to make that because of that folly? Everybody speaks the same language. So what if that's the case? If that is the case, then around the world, these buildings that are made, everything that is made, they would have all spoke the same language, had the same ideas. When the tower collapsed, languages changed. They couldn't do it anymore because they couldn't talk to the next person about how to do it. It becomes a lost art. Done. That's it. So now we have to rebuild, reform, but we can't get it because we speak different languages.
No, I have something to kind of add to that, but in kind of a radical way.
Dude.
I had this thought. Radical tubular cowabunga.
No,
I had this thought that what if some of the stories are not necessarily chronological? Like, what if the Tower of Babel and the flood happened around the same time, and the flood was the consequence,
like totally,
to the Tower of Babel? Now, this is like half allegory, half verifiable fact. Like, let's say that they weren't necessarily trying to. If we look at it and we take the religious part out and we look at it as a history, they're trying to accomplish something on a high area, right? They're trying to accomplish something, and there's a lot of high ruins. We have the ruins that were in Graham Hancock's show. I can't remember the top of my head what they were.
Are you talking about the ones in Mexico?
We got those, and then we have those ones in where were they at? There was another place. Like, he started the series off with them, and now I don't remember where they're at. But we have so many places that are at high altitudes. What if they were all building something high up, and then naturally something happened, scattered the people all across the world because they were escaping the floods? It wasn't just one person with one boat. It was many people with many boats.
Yeah.
And they landed wherever they could land after the ice age ended because all those glaciers melted.
Yes.
And because they were in a new place, they had no contact with everybody else. They didn't know, we got to start from scratch. The people on the high places continued on doing their thing until eventually they, passed on because they had no contact with everybody else, or they came down from the mountains to meet. And all these different cultures developed separately because they'd all been driven apart by the flood. And I think it's an interesting kind of radical idea because the Tower of Babel supposedly came after, but I think it would be an interesting thought experiment if it was at the same time, because it makes a lot of sense to me. And even from a religious aspect, if you look at it from an angry God or an angry group of gods saying, hey, you know what, you guys have messed up, I'm going to set a flood to scatter you from this tower and to take your tower down.
I got one better. I'm up you up a little bit. No offense. I'm up you up a little bit. What if the glacier melting caused the flood? That's what causes the flood, right?
And that's the thing. Like,
and then, right? What if also God appeared to other people and gave them survival manuals in the way that they understood him best? We go to Ezekiel 3. Ezekiel 3 says, Ezekiel says to God, he says, hey, God, I don't want to go to the Jews. The Jews are rowdy. They always make mistakes. They're a mess, right? And before anybody's like, that's racist, read the Old Testament. Before you even call me out, read the Old Testament.
This was at the time,
I
not
can
like
go
modern. Like
I can go however you want to go on it. So don't go there. What if God gave survival manuals to other people in the way that they understood it best? Once again, let's go back to the Garden of Eden. There's multiple civilizations, right? He's not going to deal with these civilizations the same way he deals with the Jews. He dealt with the Jews differently than he did these other races of people. And the one thing that I've never been a fan of, and whatever, people can say what they want, I'm not a fan of the chosen people ideology. I've never been a fan of it. I think it's a supremacist ideology. I think that it's a horrible ideology. I don't think there's such thing as chosen people.
we have to remember that a lot of this was written after the
Yes.
fact, like many,
Yes.
many, many hundreds of years after the
Yes.
fact from people recommended. So they have to believe that, okay, well, my people survived, so my people must be the chosen people. So I'm
Right.
going to write it like that.
Yes. Yes. And the funny thing is if they read the New Testament, but Jews don't believe in the New Testament. They don't believe in it. But
Right.
that's a whole nother topic for the Bible study stuff. But they don't believe in the New Testament. And Jesus actually did not come for everybody else at the time. He came for the Jews. He ministered to them. Those were his people. So he wasn't talking to us. There's a part where a woman grabs his cloak as he's walking, healing people, and she gets his energy and is healed. And he says, hold up. Who are you that just touched me? You're not one of my people, but he still loved her and healed her, and she went about her business. So going back, what if this whole time, right? All these different religions, the Yazidis, the Persians, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, what if they all believe in the same God? But like Hinduism, God said, you know what? I got to split the belief into multiple gods because these people are not going to, I can't treat these people the same way I treat the Jews. And here's the thing. You wouldn't treat me the same way you would treat somebody from Africa. We have different views. We have different ideologies. We have different beliefs. You know, if we're going off like Asians, for instance, take shoes off when you go in the house. You don't take your shoes through the house. Some people do. I know people that you can leave your shoes on, right? But Asians, you can't. You got to take shoes off when you come into the house. So why would God treat the Indians, right, the same way he would treat the Jews? Why would he treat the Celts the same way he treats the Jews? Why would he treat the Native Americans the same way he treats the Jews? He would appear to them in different forms because God would have everybody surviving because he wants people to survive. He wants people to do good and be blessed. Because to me, and I'm going to say this because I think it's something that I don't necessarily agree with. I think people of other religions are also going to go to heaven because you're gonna sit there and tell me, right, that people that are good folks, good hearts, help people out, right, aren't going to go to heaven. And that's weird to me because here's the thing. When God's talking about you shouldn't see the kingdom of God if you don't believe in me, he's talking to his people. He's talking to the Jews themselves. He wasn't talking to us. Everybody always wants to say he came for us, and no, he did not. And the funny thing is, and this is something I also take I'm losing my, I don't know where I want to go with umbrage. Something I take umbrage with is the idea that some Christians will blame the Jews for the crucifixion of Christ. And they'll use that as an anti-Semitic platform to spew that nonsense. I was at a church, and I said, why don't they, they went to Africa, right? They ministered to Africa. And I said, why don't you go to Israel and minister? Because they don't believe in Jesus. And they said, we don't do that because they're the ones who killed him. I said, what? They said, yeah, we don't do that. I said, okay. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because you're not a Jew. So you can't be mad. You're not a Jew. You cannot hate you cannot dislike an entire group of people because you're not a Jew. He wasn't ministering to you. Okay. It wasn't until Saul turned to Paul that God started ministering to everybody else because he knew that other people would believe. He talks about it. So he has the ideology of going to other people. So why wouldn't he go to other civilizations and approach them the same way he approached the Jews? He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. The Jews were a specific group of people that had to live by a specific group of laws so they could do specific things and they could procreate and become a civilization. And maybe he appeared to the Arabs in a different way and said, listen, this is how you have to act. But they had conflicts with the Jews over this. You know what I mean? And then he said, okay, the Christians, you guys have to act like this because you don't treat a Christian the same way you treat a Jew, right? The Jews have different beliefs. I know this because I was in the Jewish Center when I was a kid. My mother worked there when I was a young man. Not a young man, but I was a little kid, I was like 6, 7. Mom worked there, right? And so I would see Hanukkah celebrations. I would see Yom Kippur celebrations. I saw all of it. And if a Jew comes into your home and says, you know, I can only eat this. I can only eat like matzo ball soup, right? You're going to feed them that. You're not going to feed them pork. If they can't eat pork, guess what? You're not going to, a Muslim is going to come to your house. You're not going to offer them bacon. All right. You're going to serve like beef, something that's halal, as they say, or kosher.
Unless you're a jerk, and then you're going to be like, oh, America.
And if you're like that, then you should not be having people in your home because you're a dirtbag. Straight up facts. So why would God treat the Jews the same way he would treat another civilization? I'm just saying, like, I'm legit just saying that maybe some of these other groups had to have different survival manuals to make it. And the ones that could not and would not follow the survival manual were extinct.
And the other thing about that, too, is we don't look at this fact as often as we should have, but ancient civilizations had trade with distant civilizations that they knew were different from them. And there was so much trade and so much interaction, and there was not a lot. Like we read about the wars of the ancient world and stuff, and there was a lot of war and stuff that went on. But most of that was between close neighbors. Along the Silk Road, you had so much trade and so much stuff, and they already knew that these people had a different culture than us. And they didn't go out and just be like, well, you know what? We got to make them believe what we believe. We're going to go out and stomp it out. They didn't do that. They understood that they were different, and they traded with them, and they did their thing, and that was it. It was all, you know what? We're all trying to get by. We're all trying to get what we need. You have this material that we want.
Yes.
We have this material that you want.
Yes.
Let's trade it. We don't care who you worship.
Yes.
You don't care who we worship. If you do care, you don't tell us. And if we care, we don't tell you. It doesn't matter. It's not important. There was so much of that in the ancient world. And most of our history books only focus on the conflicts that are very limited between beliefs. There wasn't a whole lot of actual combat between belief systems in the ancient world. Most of the time when there was combat, it was political based. Yes. It was, you know what? Our people are expanding into your territory. We need your territory. So you either join us or we're going to smash you. Yes. And when that happened, they didn't just like wipe out the other religions. They absorbed them.
They had to.
And then if those religions died out, they died out naturally on their own because less and less people believed in them. It wasn't because they were stamped out or crushed or destroyed. It was because, you know what? This conquering empire that came in, they took us over. They have something that we think is better. And that was it. It wasn't about the same things that we think we get angry about now.
Right. And I also think too that caused, when those religions died off, right? When they became extinct, so to speak, that survival manual died with them. Like, you can't get their knowledge anymore because it doesn't exist. Like, it literally does not exist. And we look at that when we think to ourselves, okay, well, they were inferior. They weren't necessarily inferior. What happens is
different.
Technology is how you win wars. You know, if you have sticks and I have guns, even if they're muskets, I'm going to kill you. You're going to get worked. It's going to happen. You're not going to win. You could do the whole guerrilla warfare, but so can we. And if we hide in the trees with guns and you hide in the trees with sticks and spears, we're 9 times out of 10, with the exception of maybe Vietnam. But they had guns too, and they had bombs too. But like, if you would take an ancient civilization like Greece, and you take our current civilization, and we come out with tanks, and you come out in a Spartan formation, you are getting blown back to pre-flood era. You're going to be in the antediluvian era for how bad you get your behinds whooped.
Gunpowder ended the age of knights and chivalry.
Facts.
Because you couldn't, like, even with all that armor, you couldn't defend against a musket shot, even if it took a huge amount of time to reload a weapon.
Just stand there for a second. I'll be right back.
You were weighed down with all this armor. By the time you got up there, he's reloaded. He's got another shot, and he can hit you. Like, even if he just makes a dent in your armor, it's sticking in. It's slowing you down. Gunpowder changed everything. The same thing with knights.
The nuclear bomb changed everything.
Yeah, I mean, every advancement changed what comes before.
Yes. And who's to say that we didn't have these advancements before, and that is what caused the catastrophes we record as these idiotic primitives, right? The one thing I don't accept, I'll never accept it, ever, is the idea that man evolved from anything, because that devalues us. That devalues us as people. We didn't come from no fish. We didn't come from no monkeys. We didn't, that's a lie. It's a lie. Just like the Big Bang Theory is a lie. Mankind has come before. They will always be before. If we look, let's sit down. We can sit down and talk about this, right? We have record of people talking about people in the past. And these are intelligent people, okay? Intelligent groups of people. Not these Neanderthals that lived in caves and beat rocks. We have on record of people talking about giants living, and they were intelligent, and they built these monumental structures, but we're so quick to throw out the whole idea of like, you're an ape man. You're just
even Neanderthal is every couple of years we get more evidence showing that they were a little bit smarter than we give them credit for. They used tools a little bit different. They had a different kind of society than we did. And we assumed that because their brain structure was different or because of how they lived, that they were obviously not as intelligent as us. But evidence comes out more and more every year that they really weren't that far off. The problem was they just couldn't adapt. They didn't adapt to the times. They didn't breed as fast as modern man did when modern man arrived on the scene around that time, because modern man existed at the same time as Neanderthal, which they've proven. That's mainstream archaeology now, paleontology, whatever.
I believe that. Yes.
We bred faster, and that's the only reason. And we bred with them as well. So we basically absorbed Neanderthal, and you can kind of see this. I mean, you can kind of look out and see, that person's got some Neanderthal DNA.
100%.
Not to be rude, not to be mean.
Because I don't think Neanderthals were dummies.
No,
I think that, and like I said, I don't buy into those theories, because every couple of years something comes out that further proves that our ancient civilizations were highly intelligent. But we get painted as these dummies, and we get this thing that says, okay, all of a sudden, boom, everything was good. Like it was just an explosion, and everything just all of a sudden was great. It was all these things. And I'm like, mathematically, that's a really weird way to put things, right? Everything happened just all of a sudden. I think that what happened was we have been here a very long time. And whether it's Neanderthals, whether it's the ones that came before them, I think these catastrophes happen. The world gets reset. And we talked about Buddhism being a multiple cycle. I think that is, we go through cycles, right? And we have, I think what happens is we have these men of great renown, men of science, men of this, that, and education, all this. And we built ourselves up so high. The Mayan calendar was good for this. And this is something else that I had heard. The Mayan calendar was based on structure, right? So as technology increased, structure increased, right? When the technology reached its apex, society collapsed, and then it did it again. And I think what we're seeing is we're seeing technology increase, And then all of a sudden we get so high up that we become high and mighty. We think we're gods in a way. And then we destroy ourselves. And then that catastrophe happens. Like they're saying Yosemite is one of the big catastrophes that could happen. That would cause a global reset. I'm not talking about the global reset that people call into the World Bank and the IMF and all that jazz. I'm not talking about that one. That's a different topic for a different show. Right? Different show. Maybe an After Dark episode. But a reset in terms of the world's been destroyed. We have to start again. Our people lived in caves. But then you have cave paintings, right? Talking about a civilization that came before. And maybe somebody finds something like an Xbox controller in the sand or something that would last, like pieces of buildings, like you're playing Fallout and there's all these empty buildings. And people find these like, oh my God, these people were so advanced, right? Then boom, there you go. That starts the advanced civilizations. Then that continues, and you have archaeologists that dig, and they're like, okay, here's a civilization that existed. Oh my goodness, we should run back and tell people. Oh my God, we've built a small civilization. Now we built another civilization. Now we built another, and then another. And then by the time the civilization of that era reaches its apex, the ancient civilization gets written off as mere mythology or a mere I'm losing my words again. It just gets written off as mere fiction. It isn't a real thing. And then people say, well, what about this? And say, well, that is the cause of this, right? So we repeat the cycle again. Then you have two guys like us in that future talking about this future, and then a Terminator effect happens, and then Skynet takes over, and then Sarah Connor, and I don't know the rest of that movie. So,
and then Count Saint Germain rides in on a horse and just says everything is good and just murders everybody.
Touchdown, Count Saint Germain. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what we're doing. It's time for the show to end. Thank you for sticking through with us, my friend. Anyways, I want to say a big, huge, gigantic, super shout out to Elizabeth Wittenberry. She is the chat MVP for the night. She came through and did the thing. If we had some sound effects, we would do stuff. We would shoot fireworks off and do all the awesome things that we do because you are awesome. You have been with us for a very long time, Elizabeth. You have been with us for multiple years.
Since the beginning, actually.
Since the beginning. And she was our entryway to everybody else, like Elena Girard. And we met Craig Aarons and David Espinoza, and then we met her. And it was just like, and man, Chelsea. Chelsea was back on the social media recently, which is good. It's good to see that. She has, well, I'm not gonna say what she has. That's up to her if she ever wants to talk about it. It's not our concern. But she had been a previous guest. Very, very awesome. Very awesome. It was very awesome to talk to her. Also, Jerry Keys. When I went to see the Circles premiere, which I got to see that. I got to see the premiere of Circles. You still haven't seen it yet, have you?
No.
Oh, we're going to watch it. Next time you come over, I have it. Jerry Keys gave me the movie. He said, here, you go ahead and it's yours. He said, review it and talk about it on the show.
That's the hookup.
And he's such a good dude. And his wife is utterly the nicest woman on the earth. She's very freaking awesome. I got to meet her there too. And it was great. And it was fun. So I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Yule. Hope you guys all, if you celebrate, you celebrate. If you don't, that's okay. Either way, this Uncanny Earth thinks you guys are freaking awesome. What do you think? Should we do an end shot for him?
Yeah, I think I can handle one more.
I think I can handle one more too.
I'm getting the bleariness in the eyes, but I think I can do it.
He said, I'm starting not to be able to see all.
I'm getting there.
I got to.
What?
It's a cap. What do you want? What do you want from me?
I want a good, nice cork pop. That's what I want.
You want a good? I want a good, nice cork pop.
A pop, a little bit of pop.
I want a little bit of. Oh, crap! The cork fell.
Rice Krispies. Give me the pop.
Give me the pop. I it fell on the floor, so I gotta wipe it off.
Send me bop and never mind.
Don't you dare! Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't send it to him.
Pop
Do not.
and
Listen, it's a good thing that we're doing this last one as we're getting off the air, or else
yeah.
this would derail like a mother lover. Cheers to Elizabeth
Ding ding
Wittenberry.
ding.
Cheers to David or David. It's not David.
It's in there. Todd
Lee
David Anderson.
Dickey.
Lee
Lee
Dickey.
Dickey, Todd David Anderson, and everyone that supports the show. We love you guys. Merry Christmas. Cheers. Happy Yule. And as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? Oh, yeah. That's it.
And that's it.
I'm done.
See you later.
I can't.